How many times have you said that strippers are disgusting? How many times have you heard someone make a joke about killing prostitutes? How many times have you wished that you had the freedom and the money of a call girl while also thinking that her job was the lowest of the low? Today, I'm here to talk to you about sex work. I'm here to talk to you about sex workers. I'm here to talk to you about the sex workers' rights movement. I'm here to talk to you about the necessity of decriminalizing sex work in our country so that sex workers can do their jobs safely and not be criminalized for it. Why do you think that we hear these statements that I just said? Why is our society so afraid of validating that sex work is real work? Current policies around sex work are not only draconian, moralistic, and based in untrue information, they also put the lives of sex workers at risk. Many of these women work the streets because they have no other access to jobs. Many women are from other countries and make pennies in US-run sweatshops and came here to support their families better. Some people do sex work because they want to. There are all different reasons for people to choose this profession, and in order to create a true network of safety for marginalized workers, decriminalization of sex work is crucial and should happen on a national level. In my speech, I hope to convince you not only of this critical fact, but also help you look at and unlearn some of your own fears around the selling of sex, the world's oldest profession. So, to start, why decriminalization? Currently, you can go to jail for buying sex or doing in-person sex work. According to a Rewire article from 2019, selling sex is a Class B misdemeanor, punishable up to 90 days in jail. Buying sex is a Class A misdemeanor and is punishable up to a $1,000 fine and up to 1 year in jail. People working on the streets and marginalized people are so much more likely to be criminalized and put in jail for doing sex work. In fact, white women are hardly ever arrested, and it's almost always people of color who are arrested and deal with violence. Marginalized people just really need to stop being criminalized for the work they do to survive. In a study conducted by Deborah Cohen and Alexandra Lutnick in 2009, which spoke to 1,000 sex workers in San Francisco, 53% were homeless, 62% were people of color, and 20% were transgender. 80% of these participants felt like they had been the target of police harassment and harassed for the way that they looked on the street by random people. Jacqueline Compt, in an important scholarly article about feminism and sex work, states that we should not assume that for sex workers, that just because their work is about sex, that they are immoral. In fact, the morality surrounding sex work may be the main and most critical reason that people do not care about sex workers or their safety. Decriminalization will protect the safety, agency, and autonomy of sex workers by preventing violence. Street-based sex work can be very dangerous, and without legal protection, many sex workers, especially those in the streets, are worried about getting in trouble if they report the violence that they have experienced. Sex workers feel if they go to the police for being sexually assaulted, they will go to jail or get harassed for participating in an illegal act, or, as we'll discuss later, also be coerced into sexual acts with the police officers. This causes people to work in unsafe areas, work in areas that they aren't seen, work in places that they have no protection, that they have the only thing that they have is their community. And sometimes people who are caught get into severe amounts of trouble. There are serial killers, there are all different kinds of people all over the world who specifically target sex workers. Think about the last time you heard of the Green River Killer or Ted Bundy. These people murdered sex workers, and it's because there wasn't legal protection supporting them. As I said before, police violence is one of the main things decriminalization can prevent. In the same study I mentioned earlier by Cohen and Lutnick, 14% of sex workers described having been threatened with arrest unless they agreed to sex with a police officer. 8% said that they were arrested after having sex with a police officer, and 5% said that they were arrested for refusing to have sex with a police officer. Now, 14, 8, and 5% may seem like low numbers, but in fact, just one of these cases is way too many. And in fact, if you think about it, 14% of sex workers being said that they were threatened with arrest unless they had sex is an obscene amount and shows a lot about the disorganization and the cruelty of the police in our country. One of the main arguments against decriminalization is that sex for money is inherently a violent act. Decriminalization recognizes that consensual sex is a choice and is not inherently a violent act, and in fact that if we provide safety and measures of security for people doing this act, then people can make more informed decisions about whether or not they want to participate in sex work. Decriminalization makes a clear distinction between consensual sex work and coercion and exploitation, such as trafficking or pimping, because sex workers will have more safety and autonomy. Exploitation and coercion in a sexual manner will still be illegal under decriminalization, Therefore, this could help reduce the draconian stigma that all sex is coercive. One of the biggest things about this is that decriminalization could help reduce sex trafficking and exploitation. The biggest argument in our country against decriminalization is that people think that decriminalization will enable or increase sex trafficking, but in fact, the complete opposite of this is true. Sex workers are as invested in the fight against sex trafficking as anyone else, if not more so because of their proximity to it. Sex workers are at much higher risk for exploitation and pimping than the normal person, and also a lot of sex workers have children. A lot of sex workers live in unsafe areas. A lot of sex workers have reasons to want to stop trafficking. Decriminalization will support sex workers in feeling safe to speak up about injustices that they witness. If they see pimping or they see trafficking happening, they'll have the law on their side to help support that. Sex workers also being seen as valid workers will allow people to understand the differences between consensual sex and trafficking. Therefore, people who do not do sex work will have a greater understanding and be able to create a cultural consciousness around safety. Although the images we see every day, sex trafficking victims are rarely middle-class white kids who are kidnapped by strangers in parking lots. This is almost completely a myth. Trafficking victims are actually vulnerable children and adults because these are the people that society has shown they care the least about. Many people come to the U.S. to do sex work because the only jobs they have are factory jobs, which the U.S. has created. Working in massage parlors, working in these kind of places could be safe and could prevent trafficking from happening, but oftentimes people traffic these people because they see that they're vulnerable. So that's why we have to create a culture around preventing vulnerability from happening. In conclusion, sex work is real work. Sex workers deserve to be protected, and current laws create an especially unsafe environment for sex workers, specifically marginalized people. It is imperative and relevant to every single one of us to understand and support this fight. Someone you know has done sex work. Someone you know has paid for sex. Creating an environment and cultural understanding of supporting sex workers and fighting stigma is possible, and all of us benefit from it. Thank you.